Roseboro, and I just want to take a few moments of your time to talk to you about Freedom Project 180. Freedom Project 180 is a holistic reentry program that focuses on two particular genres, if you will. First, the juvenile crime prevention. We believe that our youth have a purpose in life, and that purpose is to not live without structure and order, and certainly not to live the vast majority of their lives incarcerated. But if their talents and their gifts can be magnified and maximized to their own ability and turned into something productive and positive within the community, then not only will they serve as productive citizens within the community, but also become pillars for those that are coming after them. And secondly, the Recidivism Prevention Life Skills Development Program, which is designed for those who are currently incarcerated, both men and women, as well as youth, and those who are returning citizens coming out of a place or a state of incarceration. Freedom Project 180 is based on the pillar of two. First of all, the curriculum that is established, that is entitled Bridging the Gap, How to Succeed After Your Sentence. You know, we deal with, in this particular curriculum, from a cognitive standpoint, conflict resolution, how not to escalate but de-escalate a matter, dealing with all types of shame-based issues. We deal with accountability. We deal with how to have a support system and a support group around you, and what does that mean, and how to maximize your gifts in order to make a mark in life, but also leave a legacy in life. The second component to Freedom Project 180 is a practical guide, How to Succeed After Your Sentence. This particular book was birthed from my own experience. In incarceration, and the things that I have gone through personally, the things that I have seen others go through, and it is comprised within a book that is not more so a self-help book, but more of a how-to book. And what I'm finding more and more, to have a successful reentry program, that individuals, returning citizens, they need a supporting cast and a support system around them that, number one, not only will hold them accountable, but will believe in them enough to reinvest in their lives. And today I just want to take a couple of moments to take one of those particular pillars, those books, which is a practical guide, How to Succeed After Your Sentence, that is written from my own experience, but also from my own expertise as being an alumni from the prestigious Lee University, in which I do have a degree in Christian counseling or pastoral counseling. And so I want to talk about the various chapters within this book, which I entitled as being steps rather than chapters. The first chapter is entitled Release for Peace, which I entitled as Step 1. And I purposely named the chapters as steps because I believe that we should walk with one another one step at a time as we journey to wholeness. Now the first step 1, or the first chapter, is entitled Release for Peace. I believe that there's so many men and women and youth that are incarcerated, formerly incarcerated. They had issues long before the prison date. They had issues long before the court date that were unaddressed. And I really believe, just like, for instance, every airline, they have a policy that you can only have 2 carry-ons. And I really believe that, from what I have seen and the research that I have conducted, that is done not only for safety matters, that if everyone were allowed to bring on 5 or more bags, it would have a weighty effect on the flight. And I mean literally, not just figuratively. Because if you weigh down that flight, then you can increase the chances of that plane crashing and going down. Secondly, it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable to have more than 2 bags. You know, whether it's you place them in the overhead compartment or at your feet below, it will be uncomfortable for yourself as well as the passenger beside you to be able to have a comfortable flight from here to there to their place of destination. And I really believe that when we talk about step one, release for peace, in this particular chapter, I talk about that we have to have a place of release to release ourselves of the bags or the baggages that were incurred before the incarceration. I'm talking about bags of anger, bags of low self-esteem, bags of low self-worth, just a lot of bags, emotional bags that we carry in life long before the gavel is dropped and the sentence is pronounced. And it's very important in life, in order to get to a place of wholeness, that we've got to release these bags. The second step, I talk about fear and propaganda. Fear and propaganda. You know, I remember when I was incarcerated that the closer that I get to my max out date, the more fear that I had to wrestle and grapple with. Whether I was on the yard, whether I was lifting weights, regardless if I was in the day room or if I was sitting on my bed or praying, the reality of the fear was there. Now, there's two types of fears that I talk about in this particular chapter, step 2 of fear and propaganda. There is healthy fear that I believe that we all should have. And fear is common. Fear is a natural emotion, just as anger is. Fear is something that we all will face and that we all will have to contend with. But when we talk about healthy fear, I believe that healthy fear creates a boundary or parameter for us to keep us in a place of safety and focus. For example, on any road or freeway, and let's just use a freeway for example, or a highway, that there is a reason why the DOT, they have lanes, whether it is a three-lane highway, a 4-lane highway, or a 6-lane highway. And every vehicle that is traveling down that highway, they have a responsibility, the driver that is, to remain in their lane. Now, you can switch lanes, obviously, and the proper way to do it is to signal before you switch lanes while you are looking to see if that lane is clear that you are trying to veer into. But in actuality, if you're not switching lanes safely, we are to abide in our own lane. Those lanes were created by the DOT, Department of Transportation, to keep us safe. If I'm in my lane, then I don't have to worry about swerving into someone else's lane. That lane makes up 2 lines on both sides of the car for us to travel. It serves as a boundary point or a parameter. And so therefore, when we talk about healthy fear keeps us in a boundary or a parameter of safety and also focus. Without boundaries or parameters, anything deadly can happen to us or to someone else. I'll give you another example. I'm a football fan, and there is a reason why that the game is played not just in a stadium, not just on a football field, but in bounds. You have sidelines on the left and on the right. And the game is to be played within the bounds of the sidelines, not outside of the sidelines. So a wide receiver should not run outside of the boundary of the sidelines to catch a pass and still think that he has scored a touchdown when he has broken the rules. So therefore, boundaries and parameters are set in a natural sense and also in an emotional sense to keep us safe and focused. And it brings us to unhealthy fear. You know, unhealthy fear is a certain suspiciousness and paranoia that you have. You know, if you are currently incarcerated, or if you have been incarcerated, you are a returning citizen. And hopefully you're not on your way in, but the reality is that it happens. That there is an unhealthy fear of suspiciousness and paranoia. You develop that because you don't trust people, primarily because of the way that you are housed in a prison, and you cannot trust everyone that you are surrounded with or surrounded by. And so therefore, those characteristics, if we're not careful, will begin to carry over into civilian life, to whereas we're watching over our shoulder and we're questioning one another. And, you know, oftentimes suspiciousness, being overly suspicious and paranoia, will destroy good relationships. I'm not talking about those relationships that need to end, that are bad, toxic, and unhealthy for you. I'm talking about good relationships of sound-minded people, wise people that can assist us on the road to recovery, restoration, and health. We can end those relationships because of fear. Well, what do you really want? Can I really trust you? And so that type of unhealthy fear, you are actually still living in a prison, though you may be physically free, but mentally and emotionally, you are in solitary confinement. So we talk about that in chapter 2. We talk about the healthy fear as well as the unhealthy fear. So which brings us to propaganda within this chapter. Propaganda is an idea or an ideology that is spoken deliberately to bring harm by way of injuring the person, the group, or the nation that it is intended to harm. I give you a classic example. Aldous Huxley was a British writer, and he wrote something very profound that I will always remember, that it is actually embroidered in my mind. He says that the strategy of the propagandists is to make one set of people believe that the other set of people are not even human. Aldous Huxley said again that the methodology of a propagandist is to make one set of people believe that the other set of people are subhuman or not even human. In this particular chapter, I'm going to hold no punches, which I don't hold any punches without, within the entire book. I'm just going to tell it like it is, because I don't have time to waste, and I'm not going to waste your time as well. The reality is this, is that there's been such an outcry for public safety as it relates to those who have been formerly incarcerated or are currently incarcerated. And I totally get it, and I understand the public safety reality, because I really believe that we want to live in a safe environment, in a safe community, and we want to do everything possible to safeguard ourselves from any individual that may have a different agenda that is not safety oriented, that may impede our own lifestyle of safety. However, with that being said, the flip side of that is that media sensationalism will fan the flames of propaganda. Media sensationalism focuses on a few individuals who have come out of incarceration, who have not been transformed, who have not been habilitated from the inside out, and that might go back into criminality, and they will highlight that as saying, this is what they do. We cannot trust them. You don't want them near you. You would do well not to allow them in your community. You would be wise if you don't hire them. And it goes all the way back to what Aldous Huxley said, that the methodology of the propagandist is to make one set of people believe that the other set of people are not even human. So media sensationalism will capitalize on a few individuals who made a conscious effort or by whatever means found themselves in a cycle of criminality, but you have an entire body of people that have come out of incarceration that have not only contributed to the highest level in society, but are also showing others how they can do it as well, and I am one. So therefore, you're going to have to come to the reality, sir, ma'am, that there is an agenda that is set that will fan the flames of propaganda concerning you, and it's called discrimination. And unfortunately, discrimination is not just about your skin color. It is not just about your gender. It is not just about your socioeconomics. But let us submit another category of discriminatory practices, and that is those who are formerly incarcerated, returning citizens. So this is why it is so pivotal, and it is very paramount and important when we talk about Freedom Project 180 that we deal with real issues to prepare you, whether you are just coming out of prison, whether you are on your way into prison, because 90% of the individuals that are sentenced will come home again. Or you may have been 5 years, 10 years, 20, 40 years removed from incarceration, and you still struggle with many of these issues. And oftentimes they're fanned by the media sensationalism that is called propaganda. Step 3, I talk about the red carpet of rejection. The red carpet of rejection is something that you will all encounter. Now, the truth of the matter is, just as we all encounter fear, everyone on the planet will encounter rejection. It doesn't matter if you have been incarcerated before or not. Everyone under the sound of my voice have come face to face with some form of rejection. Whether you were rejected just by your overall appearance, rejected by your size, be it tall or short, or skinny, or fat, rejected because of your color, the color of your skin, your ethnicity, rejected because you have a disability or a speech impediment. We all will encounter rejection, but it's how we will respond to the rejection, because rejection does not define nor redefine who we are as people. And the reality is that rejection is rooted in stereotypes and fear. So it goes back to actually the second step when we talked about fear and propaganda. Unfortunately, if one has become a victim of crime, then they will form an idea about you in their own head. They will form a preconceived notion that is based on prejudice. So when we look at the word prejudice, what does that mean? Pre means before. Judge means to scrutinize or analyze. So before I get to know you by judging you, I already have a preconceived notion of you before I righteously judge you. And unfortunately, we do it all the time, but as it relates to returning citizens, you will encounter rejection. You will have individuals that will roll out the red carpet of rejection, but you have a choice in the matter as to if you will walk on that red carpet of rejection or walk from it. You will encounter doors being slammed in your face as it relates to employment. You may be 5 years, 15 years, 25 years removed from the prison and have shown yourself to be a productive citizen, yet you will encounter that. You know, it reminds me, I worked for this particular company that I will not name, obviously. It was a local printing company. And without any prior experience, without any training whatsoever. I was placed in a position as a business development manager, which is a beautiful way of saying sales. So I became the leading salesperson of this particular printing company. And I began to just go out and win accounts for this company. I had over 10 accounts that this company never had, that because I was placed in that position, they benefited from, because those were the accounts that I bought in. Everyone that I met, they were happy to see me. They were happy to do business with me, because I felt that not only do I want to make a good impression on you, but I really want you to buy what I'm selling, because this is the best printing company that God ever created. One of the accounts was a $500,000 account that I solidified and I brought in. Unfortunately, the owner did not want to pay me the 10% that I would have received from the $500,000 sale that I made, which would have been $50,000, and unfortunately I was mysteriously laid off. You will encounter that. Now, he knew about my past, and that never came up in my quote-unquote layoff. But maybe it factored in, maybe it didn't. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that you will encounter rejection. You will encounter individuals that have made a preconceived notion about you in their own minds, based on the data that they have received from the media concerning you, without even getting to know you. And so the question is, will you allow someone else's perception of you determine your purpose in life? And we talk about that. We also talk about shame and loneliness. Shame and loneliness due to the rejection. Shame and loneliness due to being ostracized. Shame and loneliness that is due to the reality that nobody believes in you. And it's a very tough place to be in if you feel that nobody believes in you. It's very difficult for you to even have the energy to move on if no one believes in you. And that is as a result of the rejection that we talk about in step 3. In step 4, we talk about having a plan of action. What does that mean? There is no football, basketball game, baseball game. You choose the game that's being played, even a boxing match, that person, that team, they have not rehearsed and gone over and studied and created a plan of action. When you are incarcerated, before you can actually come home, you have to do what they call a home plan. A home plan is designed by you and your case manager, a plan of where you will live and what that will look like. They're just not going to release you, and you do not have a plan that is encompassed around a dwelling place that you refer to as a home, be it a literal home, be it an apartment, a duplex, or a halfway house. A home plan. How much more should we have a plan as it relates to our life? There are many of you that are listening to this right now that you have a purpose, but how will that purpose come to pass without a plan? You show me one architect that aspires to build a building, a complex, that has not sat at a table to fashion a blueprint. You can't find one. Nor can you find me a general contractor who does not build according to a blueprint. So if an architect has to have a blueprint in order to build, in order to rebuild our lives, we must acquire or have a blueprint. And we talk about that in the plan of action. And to also be aware of 2 elements that come to undermine your plan of action, and that is excuses and distractions. Excuses sounds best to the one who makes it. And regardless of the red carpet of rejection, regardless of the fear that you will have regardless of the propaganda that is all around you, we still have no time for excuses. And we still have no time for distractions. Excuses just allow us enough time to waste. Excuses is another form of incarceration. I can't do this because I'm a convicted felon. I can't do this because everywhere I go to fill out an application, I'll receive a no. I can't do this because of my past. And so excuses will allow you to remain in solitary confinement of do nothingness. So in essence, you step out of one prison to do time in another prison, which brings us to distractions. Distractions are purposely sent and designed to get you to step into another cell called wasting time. And we have wasted enough time. And we all know what our own tailor-made distractions are. But the thing about it is that we also have the power to overcome those distractions if we choose to without making excuses. Which brings us to step 5, cycles and addictions. Cycles and addictions in this particular chapter or this particular step that we're going to take in step 5, we're talking about those cycles that go on and on. I remember when I was incarcerated at this one facility where the father was locked up, the son was locked up, and the nephew were locked up, all in one facility. And I said, wow, man, we're looking at multiple generations locked up. And before I left that facility, before I was shipped to another one, we found out that the grandfather was coming to join them. So now we're looking at 3 generations that are incarcerated in one facility. Cycles. We talk about this in this particular step. What are your cycles? We all have. What are the cycles? And what are the addictions? You know, codependency is a powerful thing. And those who have a drug addiction, an alcohol addiction, a pornography addiction, whatever your addiction, you can be addicted to shopping. You can be addicted to religion, whatever your addiction is. When you're codependent on something, that means that you need the assistance of that in order to survive, in order to make it, in order to just make a choice, a sound and reasonable choice or judgment. You can't make it without the help or the aid of something. And so we talk about this in this particular chapter in step 5. But in order to overcome the cycles, we first must come out of denial. I do have a problem with this. Call it what it is. Expose it. I do have a problem with that. Whatever those problems were before the incarceration, if they're not dealt with in the incarceration, you will confront after the incarceration. And it is basically exposing something for what it really is. To not give it any room to grow, nor give it any life. And so when we talk about the cycles in addiction, we talk about also in this chapter the escapism, which is one of the root or the fruit, if you will, of addiction, the escapism. When you get 99 doors slammed in your face, what do? I'm just using 99 just as an example. It can be 12, it can be 5, it can be 55. What do you do when you're discouraged? What do you do when you feel anxiety? What do you do when you feel like throwing in the towel? Man, enough of this. I might as well go right back in the streets. What do? Do you turn to dope? Do you turn to alcohol? Do you turn to multiple sex partners? Do you turn to pornography? Do you turn to whatever it is that you turn to? Because it becomes not only a cycle, but also a way to cope with your reality that is not permanent. It is a temporal reality. But it serves not only as a coping mechanism, but also as a means to escape, to just check out, on life. But at the same time, you're fulfilling the primary need. See, the secondary need of every addiction is not the primary need. There is a reason why a person who is an addict is an addict. It's not necessarily because of the stronghold of the drug or the addiction, but it is why they need the stronghold or the drug in the first place. Is it loneliness? So if we trace it back to loneliness, or if we trace it back to low self-esteem, if we trace it back to shame or rejection or fear, and we deal with that, then there will be no need for chemical dependency. Then there will be no need for a destructive cycle. Because we're dealing with the primary need, therefore it takes the power from the secondary need, which is the codependency. And we talk about that in step 5. In step 6, we talk about wise counsel. What does it mean to have wise counsel? You know, there's an old proverb that says, as a dog returns to his own vomit, so does a fool return to his own folly. Now that's powerful. That I don't know anyone who would regurgitate in a public setting and go right back to the spot that they regurgitate to eat it back up. Now that's very repulsive. I totally understand. But the reality is, if we wouldn't do that naturally, why would we do it emotionally? We talk about that in step 6, how it is absolutely important and pivotal to surround yourself with wise counsel. There are individuals that you have ran the streets with, that you have parlayed with, that were a part of your dysfunction, that were a part of perhaps maybe your reason for being incarcerated. And we talk about how it is so important to surround yourself, not just with new faces, but individuals that you can trust and individuals that are integral. Having wise counsel is so important because they serve not only as accountability partners, but they also serve as being admonishers to basically warn you when you're getting off the beaten path. They are also encouragers who will encourage you when you feel like that you don't have an ounce of encouragement on the inside of yourself. They also serve as individuals who will believe in you in such a way to whereas they refuse to see you fail. They refuse to see you throw in a towel. They refuse to see you go right back to prison. They refuse to see you do further time in an emotional or mental prison, though you're physically free on the outside. And so we talk about in step 6 how it is absolutely important, and this is one of the hallmarks of Freedom Project 180, to surround you with a community of individuals that have wise counsel and that can redirect you down the right path and hold you accountable to stay on that path. Now, you do have a choice in the matter. I have a choice in the matter. We all have a choice, and no one can make that choice but us. But when you're surrounded with wise counsel, it makes it that much easier and that much sweeter to stay on the path, because you're surrounded with a community of people that believe in you and that will hold your feet to the fire of accountability and self-responsibility, which brings us to step 7, a fresh start. It is so important as it relates to reentry. And this may be individuals that may be listening to this from a nonprofit standpoint, from a ministerial standpoint. May have churches that are out there that have reentry programs that returning citizens understand that this is your fresh start. It can be. It can be the beginning of all things and the ending of most things. I think it should be both. I think it should be both. That it should be the beginning of a fresh start as it relates to being a fresh man, a fresh woman, or a fresh youth with a fresh perspective in life, and how to not only have a plan, your own blueprint that you're going to work, but also turning the page on what was. You know, if this is a fresh start and a new beginning, you will have people that will not believe in you. They will not believe that you have changed, and that's okay. That's their prerogative. What is yours? What is your belief system? And are you going to adapt and adopt someone else's belief system that this is not your fresh beginning? Then it will be indeed a stale past. You can enroll in a college. If you're not college material per se, then what about vocational school? We talk about that as well. What about in connecting and networking with people that are doing something that you aspire to do? There's always a way to get what you need out of life, to become the best that you can be in life as you have learned from life. And that is your fresh start. That is your new beginning. That's something that no one can take away from you. So you've served 24 months. You've served 64 months. You've served 10 years, 15 years. Or you may have served just 7 days in the county jail. Your fresh start, it begins when you say something. Tyler Perry says something very important and very pivotal that I remembered when I was penning this book, A Practical Guide, How to Succeed After Your Sentence. He said that you may receive 99 no's, but all it takes is one yes. By you developing a plan of action, by you releasing all of the baggages, emotional baggages in your life, daddy wasn't there, mama wasn't there, the district attorney railroaded me, you know, my attorney didn't speak up on my behalf, my co-defendant lied on me. Release all of those bags and get beyond the fear, the unhealthy fear, and the propaganda. Start intentionally breaking the cycles and the addictions in your life, surrounding yourself with a wise counsel, that is a community around you that believe in you in such a way that they refuse to allow you to fail, because they see greatness in you and their job is to extract it out of you. That is your fresh start. That is the time of new beginnings. And which brings us to step 8, leaving a legacy. You cannot retrieve the time that was taken from you while in jail or prison. But one thing you can do, you can redeem the time right now to leave a legacy for your children, for your children's children. There are many youth right now that are waiting to glean from the wisdom that you have. There are many people right now that feel like throwing in the towel, but maybe out of what you have gone through, the sights and the sounds, not just of prison, but the post-prison discrimination, that you can offer them enlightenment. You can leave a legacy for someone. And leaving a legacy doesn't always mean a financial inheritance, but also the wisdom on how to obtain financial inheritance, but most of all, how to live a healthy life mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And we talk about re-entry in this particular chapter or step. Step 9, re-entry and aftercare. No matter if you live in Seattle, Washington, if you live in Florida or Texas, or if you live in North Carolina or New York, wherever you may find yourself, you turn to the back of this book, and in step 9, you will find 50 reentry resources that you can plug into for help, for assistance, for guidance, as well as Freedom Project 180. We're definitely here for you. And so therefore, Freedom Project 180, it is designed to partner with other nonprofit organizations, to partner with jails and prisons, to partner with those ministries, to offer an additional assistance as it relates to the youth that are on their way into prisons, those who are currently incarcerated, and those who are returning citizens, to offer not only hope, but to be a community of accountability and empowerment. And I thank you so much. Just visit the website below. That's www.pinnacleoutreach.org for more information. And we can do this together. One person at a time, each one reach one, each one teach one.